In the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the Jews only mentioned men, and they hardly ever mentioned a woman's name in a genealogy. You look back in the Old Testament genealogies, it's always a man's name that comes there. And significantly, when it comes to the genealogy of Jesus Christ, there are 4 women mentioned here, teaching us, first of all, that Jesus had come to raise the level of women from that degraded position that Jewish society had given them and that heathen society had given them. That's why you read about Mary Magdalene, you read about Mary and Martha and the woman caught in adultery, and the woman, the sinner who anointed the feet of Jesus, and many, many prominent women. And it says the people who supported Jesus financially, Luke chapter 8 verse 3, were women. So here we see that 4 women are mentioned in the genealogy, and significantly, not only they are women, but they are some women who got a very bad history. The first one mentioned is Tamar in verse 3. To Judah were born Perez and Zerah by Tamar. Tamar was the one who was Judah's daughter-in-law. It was incest. Incest means sex within a family, like father and daughter or father and daughter-in-law. Here it is father and daughter-in-law, incest. And from that came a child. And Jesus, he was in heaven when all this happened, way back in Genesis chapter 38. And Jesus watched it from heaven and saw this child being born out of incest and decided, I'm going to come through that line. How many of you would choose such a line to come through? So that in the very first page of your biography, it is written that you came from an incestual relationship. Second, the second woman is Rahab, verse 5. Rahab was the most well-known prostitute in Jericho. She was not even a Jew, she was a heathen. And she was a prostitute. And she got married to a Jewish man called Salmon. And when Jesus saw that from heaven, that Salmon, who had come through this Judah-Tamar relationship, decided to marry a prostitute who was not a Jew, a Gentile, and had a child, Jesus said, I'm going to come through that line. Now notice, he's making specific choices from heaven, because he's deciding which family line he must come through. Thirdly, there's a woman here called Ruth. Now Ruth was a Moabitess, and she would never have been born. Listen to this. She would never have been born if Lot had not committed adultery with his own daughter. Lot committed adultery with his daughter and got a child called Moab. And from that child came Ruth, who was also a heathen, as the Jews considered it, a Gentile. And Jesus saw that from heaven and saw Lot committing adultery with his daughter, Moab being born, and from there Ruth, Jesus said, I'll come through that line. Another incestual relationship. Think of that. Why are these 3 women's names mentioned here? Why did Jesus choose such a line? The 4th woman mentioned is Bathsheba, verse 6. To David was Solomon was born through the wife of Uriah, that is Bathsheba. She's mentioned here as the wife of Uriah, not as the wife of David. He had a son through somebody else's wife. That's what it says. Now, even though Jesus did not physically come through Solomon, Joseph came through Solomon, but Mary did not come through Solomon. This is the genealogy of Joseph. Jesus' physical genealogy deviates from David through another son and comes through Mary. That's described in Luke chapter 3. Here the genealogy comes through Solomon, and that is descended to Joseph, who, if there was a king in Judah and Israel those days, Joseph deserved to be the king because he was of the royal line. And Joseph's firstborn son according to the records, though Jesus was not born of Joseph, was Jesus. So he deserved to be the king of Israel. That's the point of this genealogy, that he came from the royal line. Why did Jesus choose this line? To show that he did not come to call the righteous, but he came to call sinners to repentance. And when you go and proclaim the gospel, please proclaim it in this spirit, as one who is born of a sinful, fallen race, who has nothing to glory in. You don't have to be ashamed of your family line. We live in a country where people boast about being related to such and such a big family person, to related to such and such a bishop, this, that, and the other. I say, what are we? Jesus, what could he say about his family line? That's the very first thing mentioned in the first pages of the New Testament, teaching us to fall on our dust and humble ourselves and get rid of all the glorying we have in stupid earthly things.